Good morning. It's human nature. A lot of times you really don't think of someone unless you need them. What am I talking about? A personal injury attorney. Today on GKBA, and welcome, and we're always thankful to Miami's Community News for allowing us to host on their platform. And today's GKBA Today guest is Beatriz Reardon, also known as the Florida Accident Attorney. How are you, Beatriz?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. This is quite exciting. Thank you.
Excellent. So we were at a meeting at a Greater Kendall Business Association breakfast, and being in marketing, I had to come up with a slogan for her. And the slogan I came up with, that Beatriz is so good that ambulances chase her.
I liked it.
And that is the truth. She is very good at what she does.
Thank you.
And I wanted to just get quick background on you.
Sure.
Were you born and raised in Miami? Where'd you go to school? That kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in Miami, Florida.
Okay.
My parents are both Cubans.
Okay.
I speak Spanish. And I went to FSU for law school, and
Okay.
I loved my time there. And then I slowly made my way down back to Miami. Happy to be here. This is where I grew up. This is my hometown. I love it a lot.
So you go to law school, you pass the bar.
Yes.
Where was the first inkling that you had that, hey, you know what? I want to get into personal injury, not corporate law, not criminal law. How did you decide that?
It's a lot of things, but I always knew a lot of people go into law school, myself included, to help people. And I quickly realized that the best way I found to do that was to work for what's called plaintiff, meaning I'm working for the person bringing the suit, bringing the claim. That's usually a person versus a business.
Right.
It's usually against an insurance company or something like that. I always knew that that's where I wanted to be. I wanted to help have that community, have that one-on-one relationship with the clients. And all my life, I've worked in either retail or restaurants, or having that sort of background of customer service.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really served me well. And then, that kind of leads to a few options. And I kind of stumbled into personal injury. It wasn't something that I planned.
Okay.
And I fell in love with it. I think it's a very fascinating, on the legal aspect, it's very fascinating. It's constantly developing area of law. And learning the medical part too, not that I'm anywhere near a doctor, but
Right.
learning the spine and understanding the mechanics of an injury is really fascinating to me. And then there's also the human element, where when someone's whole life is changed, not for the better, and when you finally are able to either settle or win at trial, that to me is so rewarding. That'll carry me on for years.
Okay.
That sort of joy of getting them finally the justice that they deserve.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I really enjoy it.
So what do people usually get wrong about personal injury attorneys?
I don't know that they get it wrong about everyone,
Okay.
but definitely wrong about me. Personal injury has a bad rap, definitely. Like you said, the ambulance
chaser.
chasing. Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's often kind of the idea, is that, you're coming in, you're just trying to grab the money. But and that's kind of why I started my firm. What if, instead of looking at people as a number, both in a value of price, but also, you're one of 500, what if I was able to have a small amount of cases and know everyone? They have my cell phone. I can communicate with them regularly. Hey, I just actually texted a client this morning. I was finally able to speak to the adjuster. And, having that sort of personal connection to me is what makes it all worth it, because I've worked at firms where you have 500 to 700 cases and you don't know who's calling, and you're so overwhelmed, and it really takes away from the fact that this person is injured, and it's not always obvious. Maybe they're suffering from sleep, and then that sleep is affecting their work, and then that work is affecting how they show up as a parent, and all those sort of things that you can't get when you're just doing a 3-minute phone call and you got to hang up and go to the next one.
Right.
So I really enjoy that part as well. It's a big reason why I opened up my own law firm.
So what you just mentioned about that chain, so to speak, that, you don't sleep, so you're not doing well at work.
Yeah.
You're not doing well at work. You're not being a great parent. Is that a methodology to build a case? Is that how a case might be built?
I definitely look at it in pain and suffering. I think often, kind of to get into the mechanics, when you have a demand, you're looking at pain and suffering, current medical costs, and future medical costs. And I think often they just focus on current medical costs. Okay, you did some therapy, that was $5,000, that's all you're going to give. Okay, what about the fact that they couldn't drive? I had a client who had like PTSD from it. She got diagnosed because she was so scared to drive in highways. And every time she would cry, she would have a breakdown. You have to look at that. So yes, there's the value of the treatment, but there's also the value of the human. And that's something that I often look at it in pain and suffering. And I find that, adjusters may want to say, oh, that doesn't really matter, but that's actually what resonates with juries. Looking at bills is one thing, but looking at the human is a whole other thing.
Right.
Yeah.
What should somebody do when they get in an accident? What's the first thing they should do? Because, and I'll tell you why I asked that. I have a chiropractor who is a client, and he says, why worry about your legal aspect of your case? Your health is more important. Call me first. So anyway, what should somebody do? They have an accident. They may think they're hurt. They may think they're not really that hurt. What should they do?
I agree to him to an extent. So when you're in the car accident scene, it just happened. Number one thing is call 911. And people think, oh no, but it's they said that they would be fine with it. People change their stories. Oh, they give you their insurance card, then they tell their insurance it wasn't my fault. So you really have to call 911 to have that police officer write that report. That's what people don't realize. It's not just about calling the police. It's about having that formal written note. Maybe they're going to get a ticket, so it makes it very clear it wasn't your fault. Maybe they're not. Maybe they just say it was the other person's fault. And that's helpful too. And taking pictures, because sometimes people don't move the vehicles, and you can take a picture of the white line that they crossed over.
Right.
And people don't think about that in the moment. I agree though with him though that everyone always likes to be tough and say, I feel fine, it'll rub off in a few days. That's not quite how it works. And sometimes it's in subtle ways. Maybe you have memory issues, or, TBIs are, I think, often overlooked.
What does TBI mean?
Traumatic brain injury.
Okay.
So that can happen when you hit something, and people often think, okay, this is going to be a big thing. It's going to be a concussion. It's not always that way. Sometimes it's just a little bit of memory lapse, some brain fog, some headaches, and it can go away on its own, or it can linger for a few months. Or a few years even. So I agree with him that seeking medical attention, even if you feel okay, even if you say, okay, I feel fine, it'll rub off. My neck hurts a little, but it'll go away. Sometimes it doesn't go away. Sometimes it only gets worse. So it's best to do that.
Yeah. And I know this has happened to me. Not that I get in car accidents a lot, but you have an accident, adrenaline is going through the roof, and you don't feel the pain at that minute. And then later on, it
happens all the time.
It happens all the time,
right?
Yeah,
that people feel fine. And then 2 or 3 days later, they say, wow, my neck is really hurting me. Or, I have a muscle spasm. Or something worse, you think. I had a client, I'm going to forget the word, but his whole shoulder, his rotator cuff dislocated, was completely removed.
Torn?
Yeah, no, but all of it, not just torn, just the whole thing was removed from his shoulder, and he didn't feel it for a few days. He had to get surgery. It was a huge injury, but he didn't feel it in the moment. He just thought, oh, my shoulder hurts. But it's what you say. The adrenaline is pumping. You're nervous. Oh, was it my fault? Was it their fault? Is everyone okay? So you got to give yourself that grace, that let that subside, and then go get treatment.
Okay.
Yeah. And then call me, of course.
Of course. Of course. Of course they got to call you. You are the Florida Accident Attorney.
Absolutely.
What is the process usually? Somebody gets in a car accident, which is your specialty, correct?
Yes, I do car accidents and slip and falls, any sort of trip and falls, anything like that. But car accidents, trucking accidents, Ubers, all those things.
Okay. Let's talk about those. Those are interesting because I'm sure they're all different, right?
Yes. They're their own niche that people don't realize.
All right. So let's talk about the typical, if that's the right way to say it, a car accident. How does the process work when somebody comes to you? What happens next?
So the typical, first they call me, let's say it's the day after. I'm going to go ahead and open up the claims. I'm going to go, because I want their car to be repaired as well. A lot of attorneys don't deal with property damage. I think that's part of the claim. So I deal with the property damage, meaning the repairs to your car. So I want to get that claim.
I want to ask you something. So you deal with their insurance company? Is that how that works?
Yes. I'll deal with their insurance and the other insurance
company.
Other insurance. Yes. So I deal with both of them. Especially, but I always want to use the other person's insurance, right?
Sure.
So I'll call them to get the claim open, because the faster you open up the claim, the faster they're going to investigate and get the payment.
Florida being a no fault state, how does that work? Because again, not that I get in accidents all the time, but my insurance paid, and then they sued the other or whatever, then they got the money back from the other company when it was somebody
Yes,
else's
they
fault.
segregated it. So that's pretty common too. And sometimes people need a car the next day. And I get it.
Yeah.
So in that case, a lot of people will go through their own insurance. And, you know, nobody likes to use their own insurance, but the other insurance has their process investigation that can take a few days or weeks, which is totally normal. But, you know, you want the car now. So you open up the claim on your side. Then you have what's subrogation. They'll say, okay, here's $5,000 for the repair. And then they turn around to the other insurance company and say, hey, we paid $5,000.
Right.
You know,
You
pay
owe
us
that
back.
money.
Yeah. Okay. So that happens too.
Subrogation is the word?
Yeah,
Okay. I learned
subrogation is when you
something.
turn around and you say, pay me up for the money that I spent. Yeah, so that's a common thing. So I'll open up the claims and I'll make sure that the client doesn't need treatment or does need treatment. Where can they go? Set them up if they know someone, get that appointment rolling. If they want scans, it just depends the limits of their pain.
Right.
And that's really it right when it opens. Then I start kind of following along. I need them to finish the treatment to do my part of saying, you know, this is how much it costs him. This is the ways it's affected him or her. But really that's it. It's opening the claim, making sure that the repairs to the car get done ASAP.
Right.
And if they need a rental and then having that liability, getting the police report is also really helpful. It makes things really clear sometimes.
The photos?
Yes, of course. I usually use the photos in the demand portion, which is once the treatment's all done, I'll write up a document saying, look, this is everything they've gone through emotionally, physically, medically. Here's some photos to
That's
show
interesting.
it.
So you have to wait until the medical process is done.
Because sometimes I don't want to, so getting into the nitty gritty of it, you don't want to say, give me $10,000 and then they need surgery. That's not going to pay for it. So you have to wait to really understand. And sometimes, you know, let's say you have a shoulder surgery that requires months of physical therapy.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to talk about that. You have to say he missed work. He thought he was going to go back to work, but he still couldn't move his arm. So all that sort of stuff, I don't know until it happens. So the clients will often say, okay, make that demand. But I don't know. I don't know the extent of how much it's going to cost them or, you know, how this is going to affect them until it happens.
Okay. So let's talk about, and I'm sure there's a lot of people wanting to know since it's so popular, Uber.
Oh, yes.
What kind of cases have you seen with Uber? What happens?
Yeah. So they used to have $1 million policy, no matter what. If you had the app open and didn't have a driver or didn't have a passenger, if you had we're going to pick up a passenger, or if you had a passenger, $1 million, no matter what, for the other person.
Right. The other person meaning
the person they Uber crashed into, the Uber driver crashed into.
Okay.
So that used to be kind of just mandated. That's what they always had. Now they've changed it. They've changed it to make it a little pickier. And I think I don't love it. It's depending. So now it's 50,000, depending on whether or not you have the app open and stuff like that. But they work with regular insurance companies just like anyone else. They work with primarily Progressive, Geico, State Farm. They kind of have the same people that they work with. So aside from the fact that the limits change, it's really just like working with anyone else.
What happens when the claim, just the medical part of it, we'll say, exceeds those 50,000 or whatever the insurance is? What happens then?
That's the tough part is, so when you get into a car accident, the other person, what they can compensate is called bodily injury.
Right.
Sometimes it's not mandatory in Florida. So sometimes you don't have bodily injury, and it's not correct and it's not just, and there's nothing that can really be done. There's no sort of mechanism in the law. So let's say you have catastrophic injuries, but the limits are 10,000.
Right.
That's when it gets really tough. Clients always want me to go after the client or after the person and say, go after them. And it's like, well, if they have bad insurance, chances are they don't have, they're not sitting on millions of dollars.
Right.
And that's always a tough conversation.
And you can't go after their homestead, right?
No, exactly. So chances are they may not have, if they have minimal insurance, they probably have minimal assets.
Right.
And going through that process, it's so costly, and it often will exceed anything I'm spending. So it's a very unfortunate the way that the law is written. There's really no mechanism. Not every state is like this. This is a Florida thing.
Right.
Other states require bodily injury or require higher amounts, 30,000, 40,000.
Right.
But unfortunately, it gets really tough. That's when I tell them, hopefully they have health insurance and things like that. We maximize what we can, but it's really unfortunate when it's a catastrophic injury and there's, I've seen completely car wrecks and all they have is that $10,000 or nothing. Yeah, it's tough.
It's tough.
Mm-hmm.
Very tough. And, I think something that people don't understand is that you work on a contingency basis. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that means that you don't get paid unless they get paid.
Right.
So you're taking a risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every time you handle a case.
Yeah, that's one thing I tell people a lot is that, I don't get paid if you don't get paid. So we're in this together.
Right.
Obviously, I'm not feeling the pains that they're feeling, but yeah, I would say all of personal injury attorneys take a contingency. I'm trying to think of any situation where they wouldn't, but I can't. So they all take a percentage of the settlement. And then that's essentially because otherwise, people don't have the money to come in and pay for the attorney out of pocket. So it's a good thing in the sense that it gives people opportunities when they wouldn't otherwise have them to file a lawsuit or to write a demand.
Okay. How about truck accidents? How are they different?
So on the insurance policy side, we're dealing with way bigger mandates. They have $1 million policies. Okay. They're not dealing with small stuff, but the injuries are catastrophic.
Got it.
If you're in a Toyota Yaris or something and Toyota Corolla.
Here comes a dump truck.
Yeah. And or like one of these huge semis, your injuries are going to be catastrophic. It's not just maybe a lower back issue. We're talking probably surgery.
Okay.
Which is why they have those huge policies. But those cases are a lot more interesting in the sense of the mechanisms and the medical, because it's more than just a little bit of back pain, a little bit of neck pain. You're probably dealing with shoulders,
broken
knees.
bones.
Yes, it's really, really catastrophic. I've dealt with a couple of wrongful death claims with that portion of death claims because you're driving your small car and it's just one truck is all it takes. And that's why they're required to have higher policy limits, because they're going to do higher damage, which I'm thankful for that part. That part I agree with. But those are a lot more intricate, I would say.
Okay.
And that's why some people everyone wants to do it because they see the dollar sign, but
especially it's a company, most likely.
Right. They think, okay, it's Walmart's on the logo,
right.
But what they don't realize is the amount of effort and skill it takes to prosecute these. It's not just going after and, give me $1 million the end of it. You might have to go all the way to trial, and not all attorneys know how to do trial. So that is often overlooked, but they don't want to think about that. They want to think about, the dollar signs. And the reality is you need a certain skill set to do that.
What percentage would you say roughly, and I don't know if it's over time or you personally, what percentage of cases do go to trial? And is it always trial by jury?
It is always trial by jury.
Okay.
I always ask for a trial by jury because the other option is the judge, and you never know what the judge is going to think, or maybe he crashed into someone and he's spiteful about it, even though he's supposed to be impartial. You never want to have that. But the juries understand. You get the time what's called voir dire, where you get to ask them, have you been in an accident before? So it's really helpful to kind of understand who you're dealing with. So I would say always jury. But the amount that go to trial, I don't even think it's 5%. I would say 1 to 2% maybe. Right now I have a case that's been going to trial, or it's been set for trial since August of last year. So we're in May. So it's been many months where it's just right now that the courts, this particular judge is very busy.
Okay.
So he has 50 cases that need to go to trial. I'm number 37. So I get pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. So that's another thing is people don't realize we're going to go all the way. That's okay with me. I have the skill set. I have the time, but it is going to take time. It does take years to get finally in front of that jury.
How do you determine it's worth going to trial?
It depends.
Okay.
It's for me, at least, it's a gut instinct, because there are going to be cases that yes, they may have, you see the shiny policy number, but if the client really didn't get hurt, or, it's really something nominal, I'm not going to spend hundreds and hundreds of hours on it. And I tell the client that I think this is a great case for trial, but also at the end of the day, if the client wants to go to trial, the client wants to go to trial. So I really have to listen to what they say, but my job obviously is to educate them on that. But it just depends. There's some cases that maybe they're giving you a good offer, but in your bones, I deserve more. They deserve more. They've been through so much. Let's do this.
Right.
And I love those trials because those are the ones that I'm happy to work late, happy to work on weekends, because you feel it, that they need this justice.
So when you go to trial, you're going to get money, right? It's not like,
oh no, we could lose.
Okay,
we could get nothing.
You could get nothing.
Yeah,
okay, so you're really rolling the dice there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Or even worse, that there's certain mechanisms of jury trials that sometimes the client could end up paying the other attorneys I've never seen it really happen, but there's a lot of risk in going to trial. And I'm spending a lot of risk on my end too, because paying for experts and all that stuff and, you know, recreating the car accident and all these things cost thousands of dollars. So I'm putting my money on the line too. And that's why I say you have to believe in it. It can't just be like, sure, another day, let's just roll the dice. You really have to believe in it. That's my philosophy anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I'm learning a whole bunch.
I'm glad. It's so much more complicated, I think, than people think. They think he crashed into me, I deserve the world. Well, if they don't have insurance, you know, you may deserve it, but that's just not the reality of the world. Yeah.
Let's talk slip and fall. What are some common occurrences in slip and fall?
Yeah.
And how do those cases work?
Common, usually I will see is, trying to think, markets, places where you have refrigerators, coolers, gas stations, sort of that wetness. Because what people don't realize is if you slip and fall because someone just came in and dropped some water, that's a harder case versus you had this refrigerator leaking for a long time. You didn't do anything about it. You put a little cone. Those are different cases. Slip and falls usually have knee injuries, have hip injuries, sometimes multiple surgeries involved. You're dealing with a big conglomerate, so the policy limits are there. You're not going to have 10,000. You're going to have at least $1 million. But they're a lot more demanding, I would say, of both the client and the attorney. But they're, I think, very interesting because you're dealing with different mechanics. Like I said, it's not just the back. You're dealing with the mechanism of the fall. You're dealing with footage. You're dealing with understanding how this is affecting the client.
Hopefully you have footage, right? Yeah.
Usually, I mean, if you were to go to a grocery store, they should have footage. But sometimes you don't get that until the middle of litigation. And then they come out with it.
Why is that?
Because they don't want to hold, want to hold on to it. So I had a client who, you know, you don't get that footage until later. And sometimes, you know, you always want it to be great footage. Sometimes it's so grainy, you can't see anything. It just depends. Those cases are a lot different. You don't always think to take pictures. I've had cases where clients are super smart and they're sending me videos of them splattering the water. You know, because you take a picture of the water, but it's hard to see in some cameras.
Sure.
If it's a clear liquid. I've had cases where some beer cans break because the shelves weren't properly made. All sorts of things. Milk from the refrigerator. And those are a little bit more, they're more intricate because you have to ask, like, did this just happen and then they haven't gotten around to it, which is totally understandable? Or is this something that maybe keeps happening and that sort of reoccurrence? Is this something everyone trips over because they can't really tell it's a different color or anything like that? And so that it takes a lot of investigative work.
So you talked early on about pain and suffering and how that's often central to your cases. How do you prove that? How do you prove pain and suffering?
It's really, I think the heart of it is just the testimony of the client. Hearing their stories, and you don't, you know, I can't call them and say, tell me about your pain and suffering. But I'll just say, how are you feeling today? Okay. Are you sleeping okay? Sometimes and you kind of have to draw it out of them to really understand it, because sometimes they have a toddler at home that they can't pick up anymore. So little things like that. Oh, I used to pick up my grandkids. Now I can't pick up my grandkids from school because I can't be in the car that long. I used to drive to see my mom in Georgia. Now I can't do that. It's the little stories that you start, and those they kind of just have to happen organically. You can get life experts that talk about the ways that this is going to affect your life once you get to the trial stage. That's something people do too. But I think really just having them on the stand and explaining how this has really affected them.
What are some mistakes clients make?
I would say, especially in the auto accident realm, is talking to the insurance adjusters. They think that, I'm going to tell them my side of story. And sometimes what you think is a good thing is not necessarily a good thing. So I would say talking to them immediately.
And the adjuster wants to talk to them, right?
Of course. I just had a client yesterday. The insurance adjuster called her and he was trying to settle very quickly. The accident just happened last week. He was trying to get a quick settlement, one and done. But she has really bad injuries. And then she said, no, I'm represented. And he was so angry because now he knows I can't settle this for $2,000 or $3,000. I'm going to have to settle it for what it's worth. And so that's a big thing that happens often. I'm trying to think of other issues. I have
one because I read it on your website.
Okay, tell me.
Instagram.
Yes. I actually had a case that went to trial, and they really hung their hat on the fact that they had videos of him on his boat after the accident. And it came out in the deposition. It was like, selfie.
You had no idea?
I had an idea, but I still don't think it really mattered, but they were like, we have footage of you having a good time and now you're telling us you're miserable. Yeah, he's allowed to live his life.
Sure.
But that was a really big thing. And so in the deposition, he said, those are all old videos. I just reposted them while I was sitting recovering from surgery on my bed. And it took us a long time to get that metadata to prove that he was telling the truth. So even if, and in his point, he's saying, oh, it's just a throwback video or something, but they hung their hat on it. And so I think posting about, my neck and back hurts. And then they come out with a video of them working out and doing 40-pound weights.
Whatever.
Yeah. And you're like, this isn't, it's people are smarter. I had another client on TikTok and so people think that they don't think about that, but adjusters go in. I have another client who right now is being followed by a private investigator because which is totally normal.
Right.
Because she has a permanent limp and she's only 29 years old. So they're trying to catch her not limping. They're trying to catch her, she took out the trash maybe, and then she's going to run back home.
Right.
And so they plant themselves outside. So you have to really think about the ways. She called me very scared and I was like, unfortunately, it's pretty common. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to catch you. So they go through your TikTok, your Instagram, all that stuff. Even if it's private, I just wouldn't post about any of that stuff. You can go to have to a restaurant with your friends, but don't post the dancing. Don't dance first.
Right. Don't dance. Right.
Follow medical advice.
Because there are cameras everywhere.
Follow the medical advice first. And just think twice about that stuff.
Right.
Absolutely.
Without naming names, obviously, any crazy cases that you've handled?
Oh, yes. I remember this one client. I'll never forget him because he brought a claim and his wife brought a claim. And that's what's called
2 for 1?
Well, she didn't get injured. She was saying, this has ruined my life too.
Oh,
those are very difficult.
Interesting.
Yes. And because they're very difficult because adjusters will say, you just want some extra money.
Right.
Which I understand why they say that.
Sure.
But in this case, she had an autoimmune disease and he was her caregiver. And now it flipped. He slipped and fell in a supermarket of a leaky refrigerator, and it affected his hip. It affected going in the bathroom. It really, because all the nerves, a lot of pain and suffering, lots there. And he was an Uber driver. Wow. That was his main source of income. He couldn't be in the car for long periods of time. He would come to my office, and I was so heartbroken for them because they would just cry of the pain that they're under, and they really wanted me to understand that. And so that one was one case where I felt it, I really wanted to get both for her and for him. And so they would say like, oh, why'd the wife bring the claim? Well, because her life was completely changed too. She would have to pretend to be him on Uber and do the Uber rides for him. Mind you, she shouldn't be doing any of this because she has an autoimmune disease. She needs to stay home.
Right.
So the way that it affected their life was just catastrophic. And so I always think of them. I'm trying to think of any other cases. Sometimes you get a really good result. Sometimes you get a good insurance company or an insurance company that's doing right by the client, and you're able to call them and say, hey, I got you $150,000 or I got you $250,000. And, people are skeptical or they don't think that that's a possibility. So to call them and they're like, really? Really? They don't believe you. Yeah. And man, those moments feel good. Because you're doing right by them. You're getting them what they deserve.
Yeah. You fought for them.
Yeah. I love phone calls like that. Because they'll say, oh, I was expecting 10,000. Oh, I got you 75 or whatever it is. Right. It's just a good moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Beatriz, famous last words. If you had one piece of advice to give to somebody who's been in a slip and fall or a car accident, what should they do?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, I think you should speak with an attorney.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you should either call someone that you trust and really have them guide you, because I think a lot of times maybe someone wants to quickly get you to go to therapy, but you don't really feel it. Or maybe you quickly want your car fixed, but it's not going to be the repairs that you want. Maybe they'll give you cheapy repairs and all that sort of stuff. So find someone you trust and give them a call, and make sure you take pictures.
Okay. How do they get in touch with you? Because
Sure.
they've got to call you.
Yeah, absolutely. So they can always call me 305-537-7000. And they can always send me a message on Instagram, Facebook, all those things. I'm at the Florida Accident Attorney. They can reach me any of those ways. I always respond very quickly. And even when they call the office, I'm going to speak to them immediately. So I take pride in that.
You personally?
Yes. I will speak to them immediately.
That's very different.
Yes. Yeah. I always mention that because, I've had jobs where they have to make an appointment for 2 weeks from now to then talk to me for 5 minutes. And no, you're going to talk to me same day, probably within that 5-10 minutes after you call. And we'll talk through all your questions and go through all of it. Because, people have a lot of questions after an accident.
That's great.
Here to help.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Beatriz, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Another esteemed guest from from the Greater Kendall Business Association. And we will see you next time.